innings and 159 runs. That's the vast margin of defeat for India at Lord's, which also means the 5-match test series now stands at 2-0 in favour of the host, that is England, after they registered a stunning win at the Lord's Cricket Ground. Now remember, this is India's first innings defeat under Virat Kohli's captaincy. The last time they had an innings defeat was also in England, was also in London, but not at the same ground. That happened at the Oval way back in 2014. Akash Chopra, Monty Panesar join us on the show. But before that, let's quickly take a look at the match summary. As I said, 159 runs and an innings. That's the margin of defeat for India. Highest scorer for India in both those innings, R. Ashwin, 29 and then 33 not out. Chris Wokes the star with 137 not out, and then Jimmy Anderson picking up a total of 9 wickets. Of course, ably supported there by Stuart Broad as well, who picked up a few wickets too. Okay, Akash Chopra, Monty Panesar with us. Akash, I'll start with you. After the debacle in 2011, then 2014 was slightly better. This series, honestly, everyone expected a better Indian performance. That hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened, and it's gone downhill quite quickly, quite rapidly. Before Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Jasprit Bumrah were ruled out for the first few games, I actually gave India a very good chance of not just competing, but coming out on the right side of the result more often than not, for a variety of reasons. This Indian team wasn't touring England for the first time. There are a lot of issues when you tour England for the first time. We saw what happened with Virat Kohli in 2014. But now this team, all of them have been there before. The last tour, you talk about Murli Vijay, Shikhar Dhawan, Ajinkya, Rahane, Cheteshwar Pujara, Virat Kohli, and the bowlers. They've all been there, and some of them actually spent some time playing county as well. So you knew that conditions are not going to be surprising them anymore. And then you looked at this English lineup. You saw holes. You saw Alistair Cook, his powers are on the wane. You knew that a dozen openers are tried to partner him at the top. You knew that there is a David Malan in the middle or whoever else comes in. So there were serious issues. And we also thought, let's be honest, that James Anderson and Stuart Broad are not at the peak of their prowess either. But all that has just gone down the drain in a matter of 7 days, 4 days in the first test, 3 days here, and things are looking quite gloomy, like they looked on the first day of this Lord's Test match.
All right, Monty, all the reasons that Akash has listed about this England team wasn't expected to be that dominating. And remember, India were the #1 test team. They still are the #1 test team in the world. In that context, has this performance really underwhelmed you, the performance of the Indian team?
I think everyone is kind of surprised how rapidly they have declined in this test match, and it just shows that the Indian batting lineup are good against when the ball isn't moving as much. And there was periods during the test match, especially in this second innings, where Ashwin and Pandya, both of them were batting very well, and the ball wasn't doing it as much. And once it starts swinging and just a little bit off the seam, I think India are a different team. India don't look like a #1 test team when the ball is moving around. So I think they should bring in a consultant or someone like Rahul Dravid, who's been very successful in India, and he could maybe just help the inexperience or just help them in key moments how to adapt in overcast conditions.
All right, you talk about those consultants.
Sure. Yes, while obviously Monty is making a very valid point about Rahul Dravid, and we can discuss that ad nauseum. The quality.
They were supposed to be there.
He was supposed to be. They were supposed to be there in South Africa as well. But I beg to differ a little bit. Is India a poor side when the ball is swinging? I remember Lord's 2014. People who had gone to England for the first time. It was a green top where India lost the toss, and they were, I think, 160 for 7 by the tea time on day 1. Rahane scored a century. We got some support from Bhuvneshwar Kumar. Murli Vijay got runs in the second innings. So these guys have done well in seeming swinging conditions as well. Now my worry is, and that's what is disappointing me a lot more, that the skills seem to have deteriorated a little bit. You look at Murli Vijay, he's not looking that reassuring anymore. You look at Cheteshwar Pujara, he doesn't look like the same force. He's been dropped quite a few times. Ajinkya Rahane hasn't got a run for the last 12 innings, and that include a few innings in India as well. So when you look at these factors, then it actually paints a very sorry picture, because the teams tend to get better as they progress. 4 years of the same unit playing together and conquering the world, so to speak, number one test team in the world. But then if you see 4 years later, the performance actually declining, that's a cause of grave concern. So not just the consultant, in fact, the coaching staff, batting coach, everybody's job or what they're doing with the team, with the players, I think everything will be under the scanner.
Okay, just taking on from the point that Akash makes here, Monty, I'll come to you. We were talking about Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, not trying to take anything away from them. They're great bowlers, but we saw these two bowlers playing against Pakistan in the recently concluded series. They didn't look as menacing, I'm guessing under the same conditions, as they've looked with the Indian team. Is it then the Indian batting that is to be blamed?
I think in this test match, England had the conditions in their favour when they came to bat and bowl. And today, you know, the conditions were overcast in the first innings when Root won the toss. That was such a crucial moment. And I think everything was in their favour. And these conditions weren't present against Pakistan as favourable. But you can see that once conditions are in favour, that both Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson, you know, they're the world's best when it comes to swinging or seaming conditions. So, you know, these sort of conditions are very difficult for the Indian batsmen, and you know, they've got another 3 test matches to come, and if we could continue to have overcast conditions and the heat wave isn't there in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I think it's going to be a huge concern for the Indian team and the coaching staff there. How will they manage in overcast conditions? Because when the sun is shining, I think the Indian batting lineup is strong. They play very well, but it's the overcast conditions that's when the Indian batting lineup does become vulnerable.
Okay, Monty says the conditions and how they favoured England in this particular test match. This exact same question was asked of Virat Kohli right at the end of this particular match, that the conditions didn't really favour them. He said, well, that's part of test cricket. You got to accept it and move on. From his point of view, acceptance is the first way to correct your mistake, at least from the Indian perspective going forward.
Well, that's the first step towards improvement. If you don't accept your mistakes, there is no chance in the world for you to improve. And yes, you don't give excuses. Top teams, top athletes, champion players, they don't give excuses, they find answers. And a lot of things went India's way in the first test match as well. Let's not mistake ourselves, because the run out on day 1, dropped catches on day 2, and then a collapse once again from the English batting lineup, some irresponsible shots. Everything was playing nicely into India's hand in Edgbaston. India couldn't really take the catches and couldn't really close the tight moments. Ergo, you've got a deficit of a test match going into Lord's. Lord's thing did not go their way, that's for sure. But then sounding like a broken record, but India missed a spinner there, India missed a seamer here, and batting hasn't really turned up.
Okay, just talking about India's batting, that's been the weak link up until now. The Indian bowlers have been picking up 20 wickets. Yes, didn't happen now, but regularly they have been. I was reading an interview by Clive Lloyd where he was asked, how do you perform under such conditions? Because we're talking about, you know, seaming conditions, and he said, you got to be ready to bat ugly. You know, you got to be ready to look ugly while you're batting. Is that something that the Indian batting is not doing? That stomach for a fight, as may say?
Well, yes, we can say that looking back at it, when the team is dismissed for 107 and 113, 2 consecutive innings, in between a team comes out and you can't bowl them out. Yeah. So it does look like that. But I think it's a combination of skill, temperament, where you are with regards to form in your career at that point in time. But yes, good teams find a way to stay in the game even when the bowling is, or they're against the tide. When Stuart Broad is going through that wonderful spell, you find a way to lose only a couple and not 4. Same was the case with Jimmy Anderson. So yes, batting ugly, batting time, you need a bit of luck as well going your way. But then if you're the best team in the world, according to the rankings, there has to be a way to come out of this, claw your way back. That thing hasn't happened, at least not in this test match.
Okay, Monty, I take your point about the conditions, as you said. Of course, alien conditions for the Indian batsmen as far as the ball swinging. But what did you make of the application of the Indian batsmen? Let's take Bairstow, for example, or Chris Woakes. They didn't have a great time when they started off their innings. A few inside edges here and there, but survived that period, then went on to get some runs. We saw a few Indian batsmen survive the initial bit, but then haven't gone on to get runs. So application, question marks over that?
Yeah, I think there's question marks over application, but also patience as well. Like Rahane was batting so beautifully, and all he had to do was leave that ball fifth, sixth stump line, and he just chased it again, and it's just really sort of understanding their own game, and you look at when Chris Wokes and Johnny Bairstow batted, I think the conditions were, the ball wasn't swinging as much, and the Indian seamers, their lengths were slightly sort of wider, and you can see, you know, under them conditions, even the Indian batting lineup, I think would bat very well. I think just in this Test match, they've obviously had the conditions just gone obviously England's favour, and you know, this could happen again throughout the next next Test match and the one after, and they've really got to find a way of sticking there and not losing any wickets, or lose not as many, maybe a couple, but not collapse like they have done here, because I don't think it's good for obviously the Indian batting lineup, and they really need to find a way, like Akash said, during them tough periods, how to stay there and not lose wickets.
Okay, we're talking about how Indian batting hasn't performed in this particular series, but if you take a closer look at the numbers, well then it's not just a problem in this series. In fact, a couple of Indian batsmen have been struggling. In fact, I should say more than a couple of Indian batsmen, but we'll take a look at Murali Vijay and Ajinkya Rahane. We'll start with Murali Vijay, and Akash, I'd like you to talk us through this. This is Vijay's record since 2016 outside of Asia. We keep talking about Shikhar Dhawan not getting run. He averages just 12.7. So there's a larger problem here, not just this series.
If your blue chip stock is failing, then you are in deep trouble, because he was my go-to man when it came to opening the innings in Test matches overseas. In fact, I rated him one of the best Test batsmen in the world right now. If you were to look at other teams as well, you'll find, or you'll have to place Murali Vijay right at the top. But then what has happened? Something obviously is not right. There could be, I'm not nitpicking, I'm also just being slightly hypothetical about what things could, how things are actually panning out or shaping up for him. When you play a lot of cricket on the subcontinent, or in the subcontinent on slightly flatter pitches, bad habits, they tend to creep into your game.
Right.
And then you stop working as hard on your technique as you would if you knew that every 4th, 5th month you're actually be touring overseas, and that's where a certain skill set will be required to called upon. So that could be one of the reasons. Other than that, he was a fantastic Test batsman. I'm sure he still is, but South Africa and these two Test matches in England, they haven't really shown him in good light.
All right, it's very candid of you to accept that you thought he was a blue chip stock, but isn't performing accordingly. But we're talking about two batsmen, as I said. We showed you stats of Murali Vijay. Let's take a look at Ajinkya Rahane's stat as well. And the aim here is not to just single out these two batsmen. The reason we've got their stat is because these are two batsmen you've always considered as Test specialists. You've always marked them out to play Test cricket. This is Ajinkya Rahane, Akash, and this is in Test matches in 2018, and now I'm not just looking at outside Asia. This is overall 7 innings, a good enough sample size, and an average of 16.42. Does this surprise you, firstly? Because he's your marked Test batsman.
Well, I'll actually go back a little further. We started only 2018. I'll put the innings that he played against Sri Lanka in the home series as well.
Right.
Last 12 innings, he's averaging, I think, 10 or 11. And that's coming from your vice captain. The vice captain was also dropped for the couple of Test matches, first couple of Test matches in South Africa. Once again, things aren't really looking rosy for him. He's been tried, and he's also played different formats. So I really don't know whether skills have deteriorated or what exactly has happened. It's just the temperament thing or the technical thing. But his cricket as such is looking slightly on a decline, which is not great news, because if your vice captain is struggling, is someone who's not even a permanent member in the side, then where do you go? God forbid if Virat Kohli doesn't turn up for the next game because of his bad back, who leads the side? A guy who's not got a run for the last 6, 7, 8 Test matches. So things once again are not looking that great for Ajinkya Rahane. Poor shot selection, maybe a few technical issues, and that if there are technical issues, let me promise you one thing, you can't sort them out overnight.
Okay, Monty, because you mentioned still got 3 Test matches to go in this particular series, but we're taking a look at a few stats. It seems like a completely Virat Kohli dominant team as far as runs are concerned. He's that one man who's getting them the runs. As Akash says, if he's not fit for the next Test match, Can this Indian batting then last the next 3 test matches? Is it downhill for India then from here on?
I think, yeah, Virat Kohli's fitness is absolutely crucial for the Indian team. And, you know, India, I think Ravi Shastri and everyone will be concerned about his fitness, that they would want Virat Kohli to be absolutely fit on Saturday for the 3rd test match. And if he doesn't play, then I think, you know, all the other sort of top 5 batsmen, they haven't really had a lot of time you know, out in the last 2 test matches, and it's going to be a huge concern for them. Where will they look to get their runs? They rely hugely on Virat Kohli. He's a champion batsman, and I'm sure he'll find a way of how to cope in these conditions. But
right.
I'm not sure about, do all the other batsmen, do they have the same hunger and the same willingness, you know, to improve their game and really learn how to apply themselves, you know, in swinging conditions. So if Virat Kohli is fit, I think he needs to lead that way and hopefully help the other batting lineup to cope in these conditions and really teach them how to apply themselves.
Right.
You know, the other thing that happens when your batting actually fails as badly as it happened in the last couple of test matches, and your bowling in this test match has not been able to pick 10 wickets, our opposition also gets encouraged to give slightly greener pitches. That's exactly how it panned out last series in England, where India started decently, a drawn game for the first test match at Trent Bridge, second test match India won, it started going bad in Southampton, and then Old Trafford, and then Oval. And Oval was a pitch with a lot of venom in it, and a lot of assistance for the faster bowlers. So if your batting is looking so shaky and your bowlers are not picking wickets as often as you would like them to, then things start to go downhill more rapidly than you actually think.
Okay, since we are talking about Virat Kohli, the only bit of positive news for Indian fans would be that he came at the post-match press conference and said that there's still 5 days to go and he hopes to be fit for the next test match at Trent Bridge. But Akash, because we were identifying the problems with this Indian batting lineup, but the question is, what is the solution? Do you see anyone around? Who do you replace who with now, especially in the middle order? Yes, you had 3 or 4 openers you've shuffled, but what do you do in the middle order?
Oh well, see, chopping and changing is something that I'm not a huge fan of.
Are there any options?
Yeah. But are there any options available? Yeah. That's the point. You've picked Karun Nair in the side, but Karun Nair was not even played in the only test match that India played in India, that was Afghanistan. Yeah. Before that, when was the last time he played a test match? That was Dharamshala against Australia. So if the guy is off the radar for so long, you need to give him some amount of game time to get back into shape and to actually know whether he belongs to this place once again or not. He did not play that test match. He played a couple of games, that India A games on that tour, didn't really set the world on fire. So even if you want to replace him or replace him with someone, it does not really look like an answer that will completely make you forget your worries. So there are no clear-cut answer. There are no magic potions available that will turn this dire situation into a glorious one. Because even with the openers, when you look at Shikhar Dhawan, you dropped him after a game.
Okay.
What will you do now? Will you drop Murli Vijay? If you drop Murli Vijay, then Murli Vijay should actually ask that question, that why me, why not Rahul? Because he failed in 2 test matches in South Africa, 2 test matches here. So I've still scored runs in the past. What has Rahul done? And if you drop Rahul, Rahul is going to turn around and ask the same question, then what has Murli Vijay done that I haven't? So these questions, they start boomeranging around your side if things go wrong the way they have, and if you've chopped change too much.
Okay. You question what will India do? How's this for a radical idea? Open with R. Ashwin. I'm not giving that idea. There was a poll on ESPN Cricinfo who should open in the next test match. 50% have voted in favor of R. Ashwin. Yes, he did look like the best batsman, but is this also highlighting the desperation that the Indian fans find themselves in at the moment with India 2-0 down?
You know, India is a very sentimental country, and we are very emotional fans. So you will find radical suggestions. You will find radical behavior patterns when India performs poorly, especially overseas, where we tend to take a lot of pride in that if you do well there, that's your ultimate test, and we went there as the best team in the world. So you would expect these suggestions, but I thought that R. Ashwin with the new ball, I thought you were talking about his bowling, not about his batting, because he's one of the most successful Indian bowlers with the new ball in the last 24 months. But no, Is his fingers all right? Either way? That's another question.
That was my next question to Monty, because Monty, you mentioned about Virat Kohli's injury. That's going to be a big loss. But we saw our Ashwin getting 2 balls on his fingers. I think 2 of his fingers are injured on the bowling hand. How big a loss would that be?
Well, that would be a huge loss if Ashwin is injured and he can't play the next Test match. He's definitely he's definitely knows how to get Alistair Cook out with that new ball, and I think that battle between Alistair Cook and Ashwin is a pivotal role for India to to do really well. And if Ashwin isn't playing in the next Test match, let's say for that reason, then I think that's going to be a huge dent to the Indian team. So I'm hoping that Ashwin is fit for India's chances.
Right.
Coming back to the obviously your opening question, I think VIJAY should be playing because they've got to keep faith with him, because he's done very well in the previous tour. Keep with him, and I'm sure he'll come good.
Okay, while India, Monty, right now are having a problem of finding who to put into the playing 11, England, on the other hand, have a different problem. They have too many good players now to include in the 11. What does England do if Ben Stokes returns for the next Test match?
Well, that's an interesting, I think, sort of selection option for the England selectors to have. Do they keep with Chris Woakes, or do they bring in Ben Stokes for another player? And who should it be? Could it be Joss Buttler? He hasn't scored a lot of runs, and do they play 2 all-rounders, or do they just keep the team as it is? But it's a good position for the England selectors to be in. They want to have these kind of options, and when they're 2-0 up, I think England are very favourable to win this series.
Okay, absolutely out of time, but enough.
Drop Sam Curran maybe. I don't know. The guy who actually won you the first Test match looked slightly off colour in the second. But can you actually leave Stokes out? Can you actually leave Woakes out? Will you compromise Buttler? Yes, he's not got runs, but then you do need proper batsmen to bat in the top 5-6. So at least that problem of plenty is the best problem to have.
Okay.
You'll have answers.
Finally, because we were talking about the stars in this particular game, and I named at least 4 or 5 English cricketers, the other 2 stars, and we got to talk about them, were the umpires. How good were they in this Test?
They were very good actually. They were quite a few times. In fact, Aleem Dar on 2 occasions, 2 reviews, and he was spot on. First when he gave somebody not out, and then he got it right with Virat Kohli. So let's give credit where it's due, because they get under the scanner, and they've been criticized quite a bit. But this actually was a good game for them.
All right, we're very quick to criticize the umpires when we get it wrong, but this was a fantastic game for the 2 umpires that were there on the field. Monty Panesar, Akash Chopra, thanks so much for joining us. So that's all that we have for you on ESPN Cricket Info Matchday. Remember, India 2-0 down, but still 3 Test matches to go. We'll be back again before the 3rd Test match at Trent Bridge. See you then.